The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it is snowing somewhere, but we're bunkered down in the offices here at the Business Re-Education Centre in Bendigo. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the fifth of a series of 11 webinars designed to give you practical information to help you accelerate the growth of your business. My name's Peter Jeffrey and I'm the Business Development Manager for the City of Greater Bendigo. And on behalf of the City, we're proud to partner with the team at the Business Re-Education Centre to bring you high-quality, practical information about how to grow your business through simple and effective actions and measures. So grab a pen and please be ready to take some notes so that you can be sure to implement actions that you identify as appropriate for your business. I strongly encourage you to act on this advice, even if it's the most simple suggestion that captures your attention, because often they're the best. At the end of this webinar, there will be mention to future events that I also encourage you to consider for future business support growth. At the City, I work within the Economic Development Unit, and we're focused on bringing high calibre events and initiatives to enhance the success of the local business community. Businesses like yours is what I'm referring to. So congratulations for logging in. If you'd like to know more about the support that we provide, please contact the team at the City of Greater Bendigo to discuss all of the available options for local small businesses on 5434 6000. That's the main office number on 5434 6000. Now, I'd like to introduce your presenter, Paul Henschel, who's the Managing Director of the Business Re-Education Centre here in Bendigo. Paul is one of the top 100 performing Action Coach business coaching franchises globally, and that's quite impressive considering there are over 4,000 franchises. He has also successfully coached small businesses for over 20 years, so he has some great experience to share, and I look forward to hearing today's topic. Can you all please be ready to take notes and quietly welcome in your own personal space, Paul Henschel. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that introduction, and welcome aboard, everybody, to another of our webinar series. This one is on profitability, and as promised, the objective of today is to show everybody how they can introduce a 61% increase in profitability. Now, I won't give you a timeline on it, but I would suggest that this is, when you see the formula and you follow me on this one, you'll appreciate the relative ease to which this can be done. If it proves that it might take 12 months or 18 months, I think that that's okay as long as you're progressing the bottom line. So let's start with a rationale. Why increase, or sorry, what's the significance of profitability? And I wonder if I could get a bit of feedback from the audience, from the participants, if I might, as to ask you what your feedback is on why profitability. Now, you'll see a reference here to by Scott Adams. Remind people that profit is the difference between revenue and expense. Not sure if it makes me look smart, but it certainly is very clear distinction, very clear definition. Revenue is revenue, expenses are expenses. It's what's left after the expenses are paid. That is our profit. So just seeing a bit of feedback now. Cash flow, certainly, absolutely. Sustainability. Growth, some of the words that are coming back, some of the things that people are inputting as to why profitability is in fact significant in in terms of a business. Absolutely. I mean, it's predominantly the rationale or the source of cash, isn't it? Profit from one month being carried forward into the next one. Not many small businesses can sustain losses month in, month out. Some not even week in, week out, but month in, month out. This is where we differ, I guess, a little bit in terms of corporate, where a corporate initiative can be undertaken whereby it might not actually show profitability for a certain amount of time, sometimes even a couple of years. But the thing about it is that they've got the access to funds and whatnot to enable the company to carry that sort of a loss. And you'll see a lot sometimes on P&Ls of public companies, and they've shown a loss for a significant period of time, and they've had to draw on funds to get them there. And it might have been part of their plan in the first instance, but a small business, 3 months is a quarter is a long time to sustain a loss, and it severely knocks cash and available cash into the business. And that cash, as people pointed out, is the driver of things like growth and initiatives and new offerings in the marketplace, which are all important to keep freshness up. But without the access to cash and significantly cash through accumulated profitability, then those things just don't happen. And this is where we often see businesses stagnate, because they don't have the money to actually improve their situation, whether it be by marketing or new product introductions, or more people or whatever. And it's because the profitability is not there on an ongoing basis. So it's very important that we show or have profitability on an ongoing basis for the long term. Okay, let's look and see what I've discovered over time, that the outcomes that most business owners focus on. Okay, and you'll see these coming up there. The first one is revenue. So if I sort of say to people, okay, what was your revenue last week, or what was your revenue last month, what was your revenue last quarter? These are numbers that if you don't know, you should know. Definitely should know those sorts of numbers. I'm a little bit surprised sometimes when I ask the question, is that business owners don't actually even know what their revenue was in a previous period. Guys, if you're one of those, I'd suggest that you actually need to do something about that, and pretty quickly. The second thing is the customers, the number of customers that the business has. I appreciate that it doesn't necessarily have to be down to the single one, unless your customer base is in fact quite small, whereby your customers are significant contributors in their own right to the business as a percentage. In a retail environment or a service-oriented environment, there may be hundreds, but to know, what is your current number of active customers? Is it 20? Is it 100? Is it 200? What is your current active number of customers? And look, you can find that out simply by going to your profit and loss statement and getting a report by customer, and just see how many people for any period. And that's the beauty of electronic bookkeeping. Any period can be selected and the button pushed, and straight away it will tell you how many customers were active in that period. So pretty easy to actually find. The MyObs, the QuickBooks, the Xeros now can do that, very simply. So that's the other one. And the third one is, of course, profit. And it's funny that this is the third thing that often people know. What is your profitability from the revenue from those customers in terms of revenue and profit? Of course, the fourth thing would be cash flow, but that's actually for another time. So we'll stop at profitability for the moment. Okay, so what I've discovered is that there's 5 ways to drive those 3 outcomes. So the outcomes, again, revenue, customers, and profit. Now, they're outcomes of activity. And what's important now is to understand what is the activity that drives those 3 outcomes. Would it be fair to say that if we knew the activity or the strategies and the areas that drove those 3 outcomes, then obviously we can affect them and we can grow them. We can grow revenues, we can grow a customer base, and we can ultimately, of course, out of that, grow profitability. So this 5 ways is in fact, well, it's an expression that we've used and utilised in Action Coach for a long time, and it's one of the pillars of Action Coach, and it's one of the rationales as to why it's sort of grown, I guess, over the 22 years of existence, and now the biggest coaching firm in the world. And again, as I say, one of the pillars is this 5 ways, and we actually internally refer to it as that ourselves. So the 5 ways to profitability. Let's have a look and see exactly what they are. So the first way is the generation of leads and the number of leads. So you'll see that it's a number of leads, which means you have to count them. Okay, so number of leads, which is predominantly what your marketing is there to do. Your marketing is there to generate inquiries. It's not to, be able to walk down the street and say, do you know about me? It's there to generate inquiries. Let's face it, guys, at the end of the day, that's what it's really all about. So when we get those inquiries, the second part of it is the other way is conversion rate. Conversion rate is your ability to turn a inquiry into a customer. And you can see how this formula is starting to work. So now we've actually got a number of customers. We don't just have them, we've figured out how to, in the broadest context right now, get them. It's marketing and then it's sales. Those two activities combined produce number of customers. Okay, once we've got a number of customers, your revenue is about how often those customers buy from you, which we call the number of transactions. So number of transactions, whether that be, let's keep this in a framework here, and let's talk about perhaps this in an annual sense. Okay, so how many times in a year do your customers buy? Now I know that all of your customers don't buy the same number of times. This is all averaging. So again, all very much an average. On average, how often do people buy from you? So if we've got a number of customers multiplied by how often they buy, and of course multiplied by how much they spend on average each time, we call that the average dollar sale. So some sales might be $1,000, some sales might be $5,000, depends what your business is. Some sales might be $5. But over a period of time, the average dollar sale is simply the total divided by the number of sales total. One divided into the other will give you the average. So if you had a revenue of, I'll make it easy and say $500,000, and you did that over 1,000 sales, then your average dollar sale would be $500. So you can work out yours. You look at the total revenue divided by the number of sales that you've made, and that's your average dollar sale. Now, of course, what happens then is the number of customers. So how many customers you have, how often they buy in a year times the average of how much they spend, of course, is your revenue. So that's another outcome, is the revenue. Now, the difference between revenue and profit is, of course, your expenses. When we take into account your expenses as a function of revenue, then we talk about margin. So if, for instance, your revenue was $1 million and your expenses were $850,000, then your profitability would be $150,000, and therefore 150,000 is 15% of $1 million, and therefore your margin overall would be 15%. So your revenue times your margin, in this example that I just used, $1 million times 15% is 150,000. So we've got there the formula now of how to build customers, how to build revenue, and how profit is actually built. And we see them in the context of what leads to those outcomes, which is the most important thing. Okay, so it's what leads to those outcomes. Okay, so now we can start to talk about how to affect, pardon me, those things that lead to those outcomes. Okay, let's have a look. The first thing I want to do before I do that is actually show you how this works in real numbers. So I've just put some made up numbers in, but hopefully you'll get the point. So number of leads in the year, 2,000. What's that? That's about 40 leads a week on an average day, average week of 5 days. That's about 8 leads a day. Now, what sort of business? It doesn't matter, but the number of leads over a year, 2,000. The conversion rate over that year. This business has converted 25% of those into customers and therefore has 500 customers. On average, those customers bought 12 times, which is around about once a month. Well, in this case, it's exactly once a month, but you get the idea. And I've put an average dollar sales in of $100. So it means there's 500 of them. They come back every month and they spend on average $100. Now that'll give us a revenue of $600,000. 500 times 12 times 100. So $600,000. The margin, I was quoted before, but a margin of 15% means that its expenses are 85%, its net profit is 90,000. So its expenses would be 510,000, and therefore its profit is 90. Okay, so we're going to come back to those numbers after we've visited the 5 ways. So let's have a look at each of our 5 ways separately. Now, when I'm saying in order, I'm going to take you through the order that I would normally address these 5 ways in terms of most businesses. Why? There's a rationale, because the earlier ones are faster, cheaper, and quite frankly easier to actually get a change in than the harder one, than the 4th and 5th ones. So we always want to pick what I call the low-hanging fruit. So we want to pick, those strategies that are easiest, quickest, and cheapest to implement to get a result. So let's have a look at the first one. Now, you'll see the first one I've chosen here is profit margin. It's a very internally generated number. It's all about the difference between price and cost. So you'll see on this screen I've put up, and I will do over each of the 5 ways, a set of strategies, quite a number of strategies. If you count them, I think there's over 270 in the next 5 slides. The red ones that you'll see on your screen are the ones that I have most often used to generate increased profitability with the businesses that I've worked with on a one-to-one basis. So let's have a look and see what some of those are. Well, of course, the first one is increase your margins by increasing your prices. So if the margin is the difference between price and expense, then clearly you have to increase your pricing and decrease your expenditure to influence an increase in margin. So straight out price rise in some of could be all of your products, could be some of your products. You need to have a look and see what are your highest selling products. I guess probably the fear here is that people think if they put their prices up, and sometimes they haven't put them up for years, if they put their prices up, they'll lose all their customers. Well, of course, that's not true. It depends how much you put your prices up. You need to be strategic about it, but you also need to start thinking about when was the last time I put them up. How much have my costs gone up over that period of time? Because you see, the companies that you're dealing with are putting their prices up, particularly if they're the larger ones. They have a system of increasing their prices. So you'll see here that some of the sorts of things that lead to improving margins. Obviously, prices. No discounting. That's a big one, guys. I mean, if you start to get your clients into the cycle of discounts and waiting for discounts, then it's a race to the bottom as far as margin goes here. That's just not going to end up in anything but tears at the end of all of that cycle. So, one good way to increase your margin straight away is just stop discounting your prices and make sure you're getting full price for everything that you're actually selling. Down the list there, I'm just picking a few as we go. Know your actual costs. so many times I think that people don't necessarily analyse their costings, and so they're not looking at what that margin is, that gross margin and net margin, not looking at those things and not seeing, price rises that are coming in on them and aren't passing those sorts of things on. So, a couple of really simple ones are going to be that stop discounting and know your actual costs, know what your margin actually is. You'll get an increase in margin just by actually understanding what your margin is. You'll see one that's got rent idle space. It's also rent idle time. And one of the biggest challenges that I see in service-based businesses is idle time, productivity. It's about getting that productivity up so that people aren't sort of literally sitting on the shelf and not selling. Because people in the service industry that sell time, once that time's gone, it's gone. It's gone forever. You can't sell it again. So it's really important that productivity is kept up. Wastage is kept down. Even you'll see the last one, stop running ads that don't work. I mean, do you know how well your marketing actually works and what's producing the outcomes, what's producing the leads? What are you spending money on in terms of lead generation that isn't actually working? If you measure that and stop spending money on strategies that don't work and will never work, then by stopping spending, you'll actually improve your margin. Okay, hopefully that's okay. Good, we'll move to the next one. And then the second area that I tend to attack in any business is average dollar sale. Why? Well, it's about increasing the value of a sale. So again, the assumption here is that you're already making a sale to someone and that all you're doing here is looking to increase the size of that sale. People like, you'll probably find that the big franchises, for instance, our friends under the Golden Arches have used an average dollar sales strategy for years and years and years to drive their increasing profitability. This is very much that expression, do you want fries with that, is an average dollar sale strategy. It's simply selling more to the people who are already there. I mean, in fact, if you think about Macca's strategy, it's very average dollar sale. It's very much packaging. It's deals, meal deals, if you like. You can buy a single item for X amount, but you can buy a deal, which is usually drink and a few extras, for a bit more. You think about the service stations that you'll go into, or those convenience stores that you go into, and a classic one is drinks, and it's a two for, it's this much for a drink and this much for two. Now, the reality is there's full margin on the first one, and there's extra margin on the second. They do tend to make their money on rebates as well. However, it's about packaging. So you'll see a few things like create package deals, have things that always go with. So I always look at things like what this goes with that guides for your selling staff. What happens when somebody buys this? What you will also suggest that they might buy. Companies like Amazon have built their business around suggestive selling. If you haven't been on Amazon's site, and I'd suggest most people have probably been there, maybe not always bought there, but been there, you load something into a cart. Before you go to the checkout, you'll also receive, people who buy this book also are interested in these books, and they'll probably package them up and put them together so that you can actually, it's a value add, if you like, if you up purchase. So these are the sorts of strategies that we can easily use to increase average dollar sale. A client that I worked with, or have worked with very recently, we were able to increase their average dollar sale by over 50% within only about 5 or 6 weeks. And that was a little bit about store layout, suggestive selling, the collateral that was introduced into the store, impulse buys. This goes with that sorts of lists, and it's very much up to the sales team in the business to actually implement those strategies. So again, pretty easy to do. If you don't think you have anything that enough things that enable you to upsell, then I'd suggest that's one of the places you should start. having a look and seeing what can be introduced that go with these particular items or services. Okay, moving on to the third one, we've got conversion rate. Now, conversion rate is how well you sell, how many people go from lead to sale. And for those people who, let me check, I think we're on our second webinar of the series, and if you weren't, then that webinar is available on our website under webinar recordings number 2. I think it was called Turn Tire Kickers, if I recall, Turn Tire Kickers into Money in the Bank, and that was all about your ability to sell. Most of that is about your sales system and having a sales system, having a step-by-step approach to selling. It's not a random thing. It's a systemized approach, and it has to be learned or trained by all of those people who are doing the selling. So, you know, conversion rate is one of those, is a golden area of opportunity in every business, and particularly those businesses that are approached and do quoting, so fast turnaround. I wonder how many people don't convert simply because of the amount of time they spend between inquiry to next action. How many times do you ask to quote and it takes 2 or 3 weeks to actually get that quote back, and by the time it goes back, it's gone, it's lost. How do you present those quotes in service businesses? How well are you building up your own value within the sales process? All of these things are quite simple to do. Again, they're internal functions. It's all about what you do as the business and the business owner, not what the customer necessarily has to do. So it's very important to understand how to sell and having a sales process put in place. But you'll have a look at some of these things, and of course a lot of them form part of the sales process, like a benefits list and a testimonials list, your website that's got testimonials and videos, testimonials at that, real people, real stories, and real feedback. So you'll see when you look at this list, and of course, if you download this presentation, you'll be able to have all of these at call anyway. So let's now move to the fourth area, and that's how to get people to come back more often than what you might be getting them now. Now, too many people rely, I think, on the simply people coming back because they're happy with the service and they're happy with the product, and that's all well and good, and it's lovely and fine, and yes, they should come back for that. But do they come back to you every time? Do they know everything that you sell? One of the things that you can that is a big factor is that a lot of people connect with your business because you sell something, or they've bought something in before, or they're inquiring about something. They may not know the full range that you offer, and so they might go somewhere else for other things that you actually do sell. Of course, that's an average dollar sales strategy as well, but it's also about getting people to come back more often. Loyalty systems, reward systems for getting them to come back, communication systems, marketing communications with your existing client base. Do you have a client base? Do you have a recorded, nailed down, communicative database that you can simply use to communicate with and update people and invite them to different things and say, hey, we've now got this in? Is it broken down into various sections to sort of say, okay, these are the people that are interested in this range of stuff. These are the people that are interested in another, which is segmenting your client base. To be able to sort of say, okay, when something new is happening in any of those areas, I can update the people and that are interested in those things and get them to come back. There's plenty of businesses that fundamentally do use this as their almost, most of their advertising or budget is, their marketing budget is put into rewarding and incentivizing and communicating with their current clients, or in fact, past clients, but hopefully they're still there. So things like reminder systems for people, for appointment bookings, and the old coffee card was that we're pretty used to now in cafes was a loyalty card, a number of transactions, loyalty systems, understanding what people are buying, all these things, and you can see plenty of other things aside from that as well. So that was our fourth area. Our fifth area is lead generation. This is where I find most people want to start, but in fact it should be where you end up, because you make the money out of those other strategies to enable you to afford more lead generation strategies. So some of the classics are obviously a referral system, which means that they're coming in from past other clients, they're being referred to other clients. Social media now is becoming a very good lead generator if you know how to use it properly. Of course, your website, but your website's got to be, and you'll see in my list here, search SEO, search engine optimization. Your website's got to be itself promoted now, because websites, there are more websites than, way more websites than business, and almost more than people. Beg your pardon. And so these are sort of areas that we need to start to use, but you'll find that the reason why it's last is because for the most part lead generation is often the most expensive and the most vulnerable and the most unpredictable, and therefore it's probably the area that needs to be tested and measured. You'll see the last red in the third column just down here. This test and measure term. So the very first thing you need to do is understand where your leads are coming from, in what volume and in what quality. And the quality is simply measured by, how do they turn into customers from that lead channel. So the first thing you can do is just simply set up a measurement system that says this is how many leads I get from each of the channels that we use for lead generation. Understand what's working, at what level, what's not, at what level, so you can start to change these things around. A couple of the big ones up here, you'll see here, host beneficiaries, strategic alliances, other businesses that also deal with your client demographic, that you can partner with them and tap into their client base. That doesn't mean that from a privacy point of view you're going to lift their client base out and drop it into yours, but what you're going to use is their being able to make offers through them to their client base, so that those people become clients of yours. And you might offer the same in reverse, of course, and that might be why you form a link. So networking, of course, is always a big one. A lot of people don't overlook sponsorship as being a great lead generation source. You do have to know how to use sponsorships, not just pay money to an organisation and wait for them to do all the work. But in fact, if you want to know a little bit more about how to use sponsorships wisely, it's probably an area I've been in for many, many years. So that's an area that's always a great advantage. But you can see there how many different ways, and of course this is not an exhaustive list of lead generators. It's most of these are predominantly developed over an hour's worth of thinking on all the different ways that you can do them. Now some of them are more relevant, to different industries, and less to others, but always useful. All of these have and are used in my businesses and businesses that I am working with or have worked with. Pardon me, sorry, a bit croaky. Apologies. Okay, so we can see now that we've got 5 ways to increase these red outcomes, these customers, revenue and profit. So let's have a look at that numbers that we put in before. And if you remember, we had 2,000 at 25, and I'll fill in the rest of the numbers there on the screen. That's what we started with. Now, by better utilisation of those lists, by starting to do just some of those things that we've just talked about in the last 10, 15 minutes, and that's all, you can get an idea that let's start to look and see if we could just increase our current numbers by doing some of those things, by just 10%. We could increase our numbers by just 10%. I want to show you what difference that makes. So 2,000 becomes 2,200, 10% increase. Conversion rate from 25%, not to 35, but just to 27.5. That's a 10% increase. So a very small increase. That's changed our number of customers from 500 to 605. And for those who've got a calculator sitting there with a calculator, by all means punch these numbers in and you'll see that, you know, I haven't made the number up. It's simply just straightforward maths. So we've now got, instead of 500, 605 customers. Number of transactions from 12 to 13.2, a 10% increase. Remember all of those different ways to actually get people to, you know, coming back more often. Customer service, of course, is part of that, but it's only a part of that. Average dollar sale from $100 to $110 gives us a revenue now 605 by 13.2 by 110 of not 600,000, but in fact 878,460. Again, playing along at home or at your desk, punch the numbers in, 878,460 as a revenue increase. Now, finally, our margin increase. Our margin increase from 15. Now, 15 is reasonably healthy. 16.5 is just that little bit healthier. So, you know, a 10% increase there, and suddenly our profitability has gone from 90 to 144,946 to the nearest dollar. So what is that? Well, it's exciting, and that's what this slide is to represent. But more importantly, why is it exciting? Because it's 46%, a 46% increase in revenue and a 61% increase in profit. So remember, the name of this webinar today was increase your profitability by a guaranteed 61%. Now you can see why it's not hard to make those sorts of promises because you can see it now mathematically how, you know, literally I've shown you how to actually get that 61% increase in profit through those strategies. Is it about implementing those strategies over time and correctly? Absolutely, of course it is. It always is. That's where, you know, business knowledge, the application is where the results actually come from. And so it is about, you know, the correct implementation of those strategies. Again, you know, that's part of the process, I guess, is to implement those. How do you do that? Well, I guess that's, you know, for the most part, that's what we do here. Not just teach, but actually help those strategies be implemented. Okay, so just for fun, I thought what I'd do is I'd show you how a small business becomes a big business, and there's no secret to this. Let's have a look and see, and let's plug in our same numbers that we started with. And I want to show you, if you apply 100% increase in each of these areas, what's that? Doubling, basically, doubling the numbers. Now, might it take you a while to do this? Well, when you see the numbers, I hope it takes you a while, because you'll need the resources to back it up. But here we can go and we look at 2,000 leads a year become 4,000. So it's simply doubling the number of leads. The conversion rate, where you're converting 1 in 4 inquiries, you're now converting 1 in 2 inquiries, because your sales process and your sales system is fine-tuned, and even then it's still only 1 in 2. It's still not everyone. That'll give you an increase. That'll give you a customer number of 2,000. Number of transactions from once a month on average to once a fortnight on average, and the average dollar sale over time from $100 to a $200 average dollar sale. Pricing, packaging, processing, all of those sorts of things. Show you what the revenue is at $600,000. It's now $9.6 million. 600,000 to 9.6 million. A margin of 15% to 30%. I have to say a 30% margin overall is a phenomenally strong margin. But let's look at that. That's 2.8 million. I guess if your margin didn't increase to 30%, it went to 20%, I think you'd be up at around the 1.8 million, even so. I'm guessing most people would think that'd be okay as well. So that's the sort of increase that we can expect to see out of using this formula in these 5 areas. It's simply just revisiting and revisiting and revisiting and working on these 5 ways to drive that revenue, customers, revenue, and profitability. Hope that makes sense to everybody. Let's just see a bit of feedback. Any questions? No real questions. How long? Someone says, how long does that take? Well, I said before, I'm not sure that you'd want that to happen quickly, because you need to keep up with that in terms of human resources and funding. Of course, funding's always an interesting thing, because funding's got to come from accumulated profitability. Otherwise, it needs injections of funds. So sometimes when you take a major step in the business, you want to take a reasonable step, you've got to go out there and find funding, and it might be through a bank or benevolent family relative or something, and you'd have to put up a business case for that. Well, my suggestion, folks, is that you would use this formula as the guideline for your business case. You'd have to justify how you're going to increase those leads. But you can now see if you drew an imaginary column down between these 2 sets of numbers, you can start to see what's the increase required. In this case, of course, it's all 100%, but you can drive an increase of any percent in any of these numbers and come up with a new outcome. And in fact, for those that are live on this seminar, and for those that download it, for those that are live on it, we'll be sending out a spreadsheet that you can pump your numbers into, your existing numbers, your intention, your proposed numbers, if that makes sense. It'll tell you what increases that need to be, and you can align those increases with 2 or 3 strategies that it gives you the opportunity to enter into the spreadsheet, with 2 or 3 strategies that you will use to drive those increases. For anybody that's listening that's downloaded this, if you, at the end, you'll see my email address. If you send me an email, I'll be happy to share that. Spreadsheet with you. That way, I'll know all the people who've downloaded this webinar and who've gotten this far through it. And who want to actually take action. So please do that. Okay, no further questions. Let's move on and look at the next one. What that means is, and I guess this is the really sits at the heart of this. It's not necessary to do extraordinary things to get extraordinary results. We did that through a 10% increase in each of those 5 ways. Simple 10% increase in those 5 ways to get that first 46% and 61% increase in profit. Now that's a term that I didn't make up. This gentleman did, and if you don't recognise him, his name's Warren Buffett, and he's currently worth $72.3 billion. So I guess if he says it, it must be true, and certainly that's been his philosophy in his own investment portfolios. He doesn't look for flipping shares, or he pretty much looks at solid shares that he buys and sits on, and over time they grow, and so has his wealth accordingly. And your business can do pretty much exactly the same thing. So some words of wisdom from Warren. I just ask see if there's any questions before we move on and finish up just with a little bit of information about our upcoming work or anything, and a few things and links and whatnot. So stay tuned for that. No, everybody seems no. Thank you for that bit of feedback. No questions as such. Okay, so we'll move forward, and just want to share with you a couple of things that are coming up. Our next webinar is Wednesday the 9th of July, just the same as this one. It's called Getting Them Coming Back Again and Again. And of course, so this is an influencer of number of transactions. So a lot of our webinars that you'll realise by now are linked to those 5 ways, and giving you more and more information on each of those 5 ways. So getting them coming back in again, 9th of July. You'll see the link for that on our website to join that. And if you're on our client base, our database, if you've been on this call before, you'll get a notice to sort of say, hey, this is what it's all about, and register. So please do that. We look forward to hosting you again in a month's time. One of the things we do here at the Business Re-Education Centre is we understand that people don't always necessarily know which of their best strategies to use, and perhaps even how to do them. But we've had a lot of experience doing these 5 ways, particularly over many, many years and across most industries. So we've got a pretty good idea of what are the right strategies in each of the 5 ways to use in the various types of businesses that are actually out there. So we offer a discovery session, we call it, and it uncovers the opportunities in your business. And we would predominantly look at that 5 ways. In this case, we would look at a 5 ways, a scenario that would best suit you to create that sort of growth in your business. If you'd like to book a discovery session, you do that simply by sending Darren an email at darren@businessreeducation.com.au. It's $220. That includes GST, and it's also our fundraiser. All of that money, less the GST, $200 each time, goes directly to Beyond Blue, which is our charity of choice. Beyond Blue being a major supporter of mental health. We'll put it in the positive, mental health. We've chosen that as our charity because small businesses are sometimes quite stressful, and we think that what we do does help people's mindset, relieves them of some of that stress, hopefully all of it over time, and therefore we've decided to back it as our charity of choice. So Darren@businessreeducation.com.au, and Darren will sort out a time to suit both yourself and us to do that. Great. That, I think, is about all I need to tell you. I thank you for your attendance, as always. If you wish to get a replay of this webinar and download it, you can just simply go to the W's businessreeducation.com.au/webinar recordings, or if you go to the home page, you'll find a tab, webinar recordings. Just simply look for this one and download it. Takes a minute or two to download, and you'll have it stored on wherever you'd like to store it forevermore. So again, thank you very much for being a part of this webinar in June. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you, or presenting to you again in July. And of course, thank the City of Greater Bendigo for helping provide this, what I hope is a valuable resource to small business. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next month. Bye for now.